Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Money Down Pod, episode number 18. This is a college football episode. I am Kayvon and Shawn. That is Shawn White. Follow us on Twitter at Money Down Pod. Follow Shawn at Dumpster Fire Fan. Follow me at Kayvon_sports. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This is a special edition of the College Football Pod. We always have a college football episode that we do at this time every week, but this one's going to be a little bit more intense. This one's going to be a little bit longer because there is so much going on in the college atmosphere. So usually we start off by talking about what the playoff rankings were, some of the matchups, what happened last weekend. We're going to get to the playoff rankings. There's no doubt about that. But obviously, we have to start with what is going on in the college football world with the coaching carousel and what I believe is maybe the most iconic and impactful coaching changes that we've seen in modern college football history. And I know that sounds hyperbolic, but as we start to lay out the effects of this, you guys will see why. So, Shawn, before we dive much deeper, how are you doing? How was your weekend?
I'm doing great. It was a great weekend for college football, NFL action, everything. Our teams played each other. So before you dive into the college thing, I guess I should hit on this. Usually we do an NFL recap.
Yep.
This week, me and Kayvon kind of talked about it. A lot of the games really just ended up kind of not having a huge impact. We have a few things we'll hit on, but we're going to just combine that reaction into our preview for next week tomorrow. So that's why you're not getting a full NFL recap show, because all this stuff on college is actually the bigger story this week, which is unusual. Usually the NFL outshines it, but that's kind of where we thought we figured we'd give you some better quality instead of us just coming up here for 30, 35 minutes talking about some games that really didn't have a lot of impact and kind of doing it. We figured we'd give you some better quality over the quantity in this aspect. So we're going to hit on this big college football news, and we'll get you the NFL recap with our preview in the show later in the week.
Yeah, that well said. And it just makes more sense. Sometimes you've got to change the way. And if you're a sports fan out there, you're not going to want to listen to us talk about Rodgers' toe and how bad the Rams are when we're going to mention that anyways when we break down the games coming up next week. Everybody wants to talk about the college football news. So that's how it's going to work. So just look for 2 shows this week from the Money Down Pod, one strictly on college and then one all about the NFL upcoming week and also tied into what we just saw this previous week. So Shawn, before we get into it, let's get into it right now, actually. And let's start off with the news that now with what's happened in Brian Kelly, it feels like it was a year ago, and that's Lincoln Riley going to USC. Lincoln has been introduced as the coach already. He has talked. He has said that this is something that happened in the spur of the moment. Oklahoma's AD talked, and he said that he believes that. He said there was no talking going on during the season. He said that this kind of came out after the game on Saturday. He found out USC was interested, and he went for it. I want to open the floor first to offer your take on Lincoln Riley's choice to move to USC, and then I will move further on to that. But I do just want to say, to open it, that in my opinion, this is the biggest and most impactful move that we've seen in modern college football history, because he is now able to take players with him. And that is what is changing everything. Same with Brian Kelly. And again, we're going to get into that aspect. I first want you to hit on your thoughts of just him moving there. But this is why it's such a big deal. In the past, these coaches could leave. Caleb Williams could never go with him. Those recruiting classes that he just had coming in, they could never go with him. But now that there's a transfer portal, it can change everything. And that is why this is such big news. Open the floor to you, sir.
So, first off, this is probably the biggest move we've had in what, 10, since Saban went to Bama, maybe?
I was about to say probably
Ohio State and Urban Meyer.
Yeah, I was about to say probably Ohio State, Urban Meyer. And then before that would be Saban going from LSU to Bama.
I mean, that's a big name coach. I mean, a big time. I mean, maybe top three college coach. And he's going to a sleeping giant powerhouse of a team that's definitely in line to dominate a conference for sure and put LA back on the map, because they've been out of it for a while. USC has just made such bad decisions over the last 10, 12 years when it comes to coaching and everything. And they just nailed it. I mean, when you have a chance to get Lincoln Riley, you have to nail it. As for Lincoln, I'm going to kind of go in a little bit on this. My first impression and my thoughts are he wanted no part of the SEC because he could have went to LSU. That was already reported they offered him. And I mean, that's a recruiting power. LSU's a power in themselves. Somebody even argues a better job than USC, but you have all the things to go with. But he didn't take LSU. Oklahoma is going into the SEC, and Oklahoma's a top 5 job, and he could have stayed there. He had it rolling. He had the recruits coming. I mean, he has 3 5-stars from LA that was going to Oklahoma to be with him that I'm assuming now will go back to USC. Malachi already has the quarterback.
Yep.
So he already has gone back to USC. I'm assuming the other 2 will follow.
Yep.
So in my opinion is he didn't want any part of the SEC. And I mean, it's not for everyone. It's a dog eat dog world out there. You're going against the best college football coach of all time, in my opinion, and Nick Saban. You're going against Kirby Smart, who recruits his ass off down in Georgia. I mean, you know he's going to get his Florida recruits and everything. You're just going to have to deal with stuff like that. It's a bunch of politicking going on with these boosters, how it works in the SEC. And I mean, he might not have wanted any part of that. He can go to the Pac-12 now. His main competition is just Oregon and Cristobal, and X's and O's. They're on completely different planes when it comes to coaching in a game. And now he just throws a rock and gets any recruit he wants out of LA, which he was already dominating in recruiting at Oklahoma. It's a solid move for him in a smart way, but I do think the SEC was a big reason why he chose to stick with the Pac-12 instead, and it's just an easier path for him to get to the playoff every year, not having to play that gauntlet that he would have to play in the SEC, even if it's going to 12 teams.
Yeah, it's a great point. That's why I wanted you to open the show, because you texted me this after the news came out, and I thought it was a fascinating point. And you started to see other, I mean, really big name national writers and media personalities say the same thing. And this is my thing on it. First of all, I don't think you're wrong. I do think that the narrative out there is he didn't want to have to deal with that. And I think that is I don't know him, but I think that's a fair narrative to put out there. But I also think 2 things can be true at the same time. I think he can look at it and say this. First of all, we never are going to know if Oklahoma never made that decision to go to SC if he would have stayed. That's something we'll never know, but it would have been fascinating to know. We also don't know if he was involved in the process. I think that decision for them to go to the SEC was bigger than him. I think that had much bigger powers involved in Lincoln Riley. Maybe he got told about it. I don't know. But once he found out about it, that's when maybe he started, and then he really was hitting those LA areas like you were talking about. Maybe he was setting the pipeline to do that, and that's why he was doing so well out in LA. Excuse me. Anyways, my thing is, when I say I think 2 things can be true, is this. I think you could say you can be scared, but I also think you can say that he can just be extremely smart. And he could go about it of, I want the job security, but most importantly, I want to be the big dog. And think about this, Shawn. If right now, not talking about wins or losses or anything like that, who's the big dog in the Big 12? It's Texas. Like, no matter how good Oklahoma is, Texas is the big dog because of the money, the resources, and because of Texas. Now, so he never was the big dog in that platform in terms of at the Big 12. He's definitely not going to be the big dog in the SEC unless he got the Alabama job, which obviously is not going to happen. He would have been a big dog in LSU, but he's not going to be the big dog. Like you said, he will dominate the Pac-12. He gets to be the big dog. And maybe he wants to be the big dog, which can also tie into your part of he's scared. That can tie into it. But I also look at it of he just wants to be the guy of the conference. He wants the team of the conference. He wants to be the guy of the conference. He doesn't want it to be Oklahoma's great, but hey, Texas. He doesn't want it to be Lincoln Riley's doing great at LSU, but Bama. He wants to be USC and only USC, dominating everybody else. And I think it's a smart move. I think it's a very smart move. I think he's looking at it and saying, look, Oklahoma, they're a better team. They're a better school in the last couple of years. But me and you are old enough to remember this. Some of our audience might not be. When Pete Carroll had USC going, everybody was scared of that program. SEC schools will never admit this, but everybody was scared of that program. He can tap into something at USC that can change the landscape for USC back to what it used to be. And I think he's looking at that and saying, I'm going to take that opportunity. And maybe it ties in as well with him being scared. You just have to look at it either way you want.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. He's definitely working smarter, not harder in this situation, and I can't fault him for that at all. He's definitely going to be easily the number one coach, number one recruiter, and the number one school in the Pac-12. That's just how it is. Each conference has a team, one team that if they are hitting on all cylinders with the right coaching is going to be better than every other one. I'm sorry, Michigan. I know you just beat Ohio State. Ohio State is that in the Big Ten. Like, that's just how it is. The only time that has flipped recently is in the ACC. And I'm not even necessarily sure that if a big-time, huge coach like that went to Miami or Florida State, that they couldn't rise up and match Clemson either. It's just Clemson's been doing it for so long now under Dabo, and those two schools have been dumpster fires, as my Twitter thing would say, that the Clemson's just taken over the ACC. But Bama's always a sleeping giant in the SEC. Texas is big no matter where they go. Even in the SEC, though, Texas is going to have to go against these big-time schools.
Oh, yeah.
It's just that's how it is. The thing about Lincoln that is smart about this, though, is I'm not talking about the coaching in the SEC is so good, or you're going against these powerhouse teams every week and he's scared of that. Because Lincoln X's and O's wise, I can put up against anybody in college football. And even in some in the NFL, his offense is legit. What I'm talking about is what he can't do at Oklahoma very well is recruit D linemen, in my opinion. That's one thing they struggle with. The Big 12 in general always has. The thing about going to the SEC is even if you were in Oklahoma, even if you're Texas, you're still going up against Bama, who's going to get elite D linemen no matter what. You're going against Georgia, who's going to get elite D linemen no matter what. You're going against that Clemson area where Clemson still pulls elite D linemen. What he's doing now in LA is none of those D linemen that are elite in LA are going to leave LA now. They're going to go straight to his team. They're not going to go to Oregon as much anymore, even though Cristobal can still recruit and might get a few of them. He's going to have that elite D-line he needs to compete for national championships now to go with his offensive genius. So in that regard, yes, he's working a lot smarter, not harder. And when I say he's a little scared of the SEC, I don't mean just X's and O's. I mean in recruiting-wise, he now has a team that can match SEC teams week in and week out without having to go up against these SEC schools for these elite recruits.
Yeah, no, that the smarter, working smarter, not harder is a great phrase for that. It's honestly what Dabo is doing at Clemson, except Dabo was never in the position of leaving when his team was about to go to the SEC. Dabo just did it, but Dabo was able to create a team at Clemson that can compete with SEC schools, that can recruit with SEC schools. He just doesn't have to do it in their territory, which is a big difference that some people don't realize. You know, when you're sitting there and you're 50, 60, 100 miles away from Alabama, it's harder to be able to say, stay at this school instead of go to this school. But when you're outside of the SEC, you can say, come here because you'll be the best in this conference no matter what. You will be that. And I will say this about him. USC, they've always gotten skill position players, man. Like, even with these bad coaches they've had, their issue is they haven't been able to dominate the trenches, even though, and a quarterback play as well, even though those players are there, they haven't been able to dominate the trenches. That has been going to, just like you said, the Oregons, the Utahs. Utah is always a ground and pound hard team, just like Oregon. He's going to be able to get your 5-star quarterbacks. He's going to be able to get your 5-star receivers, running backs, all that. And he should be able to get your D-line and O-lineman as well. But that's something he has to change about USC to bring back the dominance. That's what Pete Carroll did. That's what you have to do if you want to actually turn that school back into every single year. They're going into the season as a top 5 ranked team. And I think he will be able to do it, but we'll have to see it. But your point makes total sense. And all of it is spot on in my opinion. And I think it's that's why I said I think it's totally fair to use that scared word if you want. I just also want to look at it as to say, I think he just wants to be the top dog and do it in his own conference and do it the way Dabo's doing it. He just had to go through a much publicer route to do it, a more criticized route to do it, because he's moving at the last second right before they're moving to the SEC, and he's going to get criticized for that, and you can't knock anyone for criticizing him for that.
Yeah, and he did. I do have to give Dabo credit on this. Lincoln's going to like a powerhouse. Like that's what SE is. Dabo kind of just built Clemson. Clemson's
That's
always
true.
been like an
That's
average
true.
program. They're not like Florida State or Miami in the ACC. He definitely built Clemson up to that. But the dysfunction of those other two teams, like I said, that's what caused that. Because if Miami was hitting on all cylinders, Clemson wouldn't be what Clemson is today.
No.
I mean, you would look at it completely different. A lot of those players would actually go to Miami. And I am interested if those Lane Kiffin rumors to Miami are true, because that's something I want to monitor after the season to see if he would do something like that. But Lane could also stay and be an Ole Miss. So that's the one that's interesting to me that hasn't really broken or been announced. So that's what I want to keep an eye on moving forward. Back to Lincoln, though, you're right. He's going to get a lot of these transfer portal people's coming back. Like there's a lot of LA kids that's not happy where they are right now. That's just going to flock back to LA now that Lincoln's there. And it's going to be interesting to see. I know you mentioned Caleb Williams, and I do want to talk about this for a minute.
Yeah.
Are you sure he's going to go to SC? Because I'm not sure right now.
I don't know if he will. Because of Malachi going, I don't know if he will.
Yeah, because I have a strange feeling he might just ride with Jackson Dart for a little bit and then have Malachi come in and be his first guy kind of thing.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, I wonder if Caleb stays at Oklahoma or goes, because this is where this coaching movement with the transfer portal is actually turning college football into like a hype off season like you get with the NFL and NBA, because this is all I've really wanted to talk about. I know that's the case with you. This is crazy having all these people on the move. It really drives content and drives news. So now we got, like, I know you had the rumor out there about Venables in Oklahoma and maybe DJ wanting to go there. Yeah. If DJ's not going there, if Caleb Williams is there, Caleb Williams would have to go somewhere. Does Caleb Williams go to LSU now? Where does Caleb go? Now we have all those talking points on college football. It's just great for the sport, for one, that I wanted to bring up. Lincoln moving like this, a lot of this movement, it just is great for college football in general because it drives more content again, and football's just dominant over here. That's just how it goes.
It is, man. That's why I said to start off the show, I think it's the most impactful coaching move in the history because of the fact, like, dude, think about this, man. And people are still knocking, and we're about to get into Brian Kelly here in a minute. People are still really criticizing Brian Kelly for the way he left and even a little bit to Lincoln as well. But to me, it's different now because the players have the choice as well. You know, a couple years ago, before the transfer portal, Caleb Williams, if he wanted to transfer, he would have to sit out a year. He would have to lose a year of eligibility. The fact that changed, it's NFL free agency. That's what it is now. It has literally become NFL free agency, and I love every bit of it because I'm someone that's always sit here and said it's bullcrap that the coaches can leave whenever they want, but the players can't. It's bullcrap that, and you hear this narrative, Shawn, it drives me crazy. Players commit to the university. No, the hell they don't. Players commit to the coach. The players commit to the system. All those quarterbacks that Lincoln, they were going there because of what Lincoln did with the past quarterbacks, because of the Heisman Trophy finalists, because of the NFL draft picks. Players commit to the system and to the coach. Now, can the university help if you have a big Notre Dame sign behind you, if you have a big Oklahoma sign behind you? But to your point on Dabo and Clemson, you can recruit anywhere because they will come to you if you're able to build it right. So the fact that these players used to not be able to leave, but now they can, it just changes everything, and it makes it so fun. To your Caleb Williams point, I don't think he is going to leave. I'm with you. I don't think he's going to USC. I don't think it at all anymore. One of the reasons is he didn't even have that great. He had good spurts of it, but he had an up and down rookie year. Part of me wonders if he thinks maybe I might be better without Lincoln. And that could be crazy to think of, man, but maybe he wants to try it with someone different as well, especially since he knows Malachi is going to be right behind him. And, you know, that you mess up a little bit next year, Malachi could then end up coming in once he becomes a freshman. So that part of me thinks that maybe Caleb's like, why not give it a try with someone else and see what happens from there? The question is, though, does Oklahoma just lose all these guys? Because they're losing guys left and right already. Caleb's the one guy that has not said anything yet, but they've lost a center. They've lost a couple wide receivers. They're losing a lot of players already.
Yeah, I didn't see which two receivers are. Did Mario Williams transfer or is he good?
I didn't see. I'll look that up. I didn't see Mario Williams. I'll look though.
Because I think that's going to be a little bit of what has to do with Caleb too. I think if Marvin Mims and Mario Williams stays, I think you're pretty solid. Like those two are like bona fide top 20 NFL picks both years they come out, as long as Caleb throws them the ball. I mean, Rattler made him look bad, but Rattler was throwing everywhere. So, I mean, if those two stay, then he's got the weapons, if you know what I mean. But if those two were to leave, if I'm Caleb Williams, I'm leaving too. Like it's time to go. But I mean, that's just something else there. The way I'm looking at it too, who's Oklahoma going to hire? That's what I'm talking about. Because I know Venables has been rumored. I'd be nervous about that, man. Like,
he has some personal issues too, and that's the reason why he hasn't gotten some jobs in the past. I'm with you on that.
I mean, he's turned down several, but some of his defenses, man, some of them still get torched too. Yeah. I mean, I know he's great. He's a great recruiter. Don't get me wrong. That would actually hurt Dabo a ton because he's like Dabo's number one recruiter.
Yeah, it is.
Like he's like a top D coordinator and a top recruiter. But leaving for Oklahoma, man, that's a different kind of thing. I mean, but they are going. I will say this. Them going to the SEC makes that move more valid just because defense is so much more important there. I would hate that if they were still in the Big 12. You got to score. Like, that's all that matters there. So, I mean, that's an interesting situation to watch.
You're right. I find that interesting because your main thing, that's a risky move. Like, LSU hiring Brian Kelly, there's no risk in that. Like, we'll get into that in a minute. The only risk is if you don't think he can compete with recruiting against guys in the SEC, which I don't think so, but we'll get into that here in a minute. Venables is not a proven commodity. Venables isn't somebody that has shown us as a head coach. He's a great defensive coordinator and a really good recruiter, but can he do it all as a head coach? Again, you're right. With his defense in the SEC, that will help, but it looked like last night that was going to be announced by the middle of the night to the morning. And the fact that hasn't yet, it makes me wonder if maybe those rumors weren't as hot and heavy that everyone thought, or maybe they're starting to look at different situations, especially now that this Brian Kelly news dropped. Maybe they're trying to go different route of it because I agree, man. And, the one thing is with Oklahoma's athletic director, I think Joe Castellano or something like that. I might have pronounced his name wrong.
He's a good athletic director too. He's great. He's a great athletic director.
One of the best. Yeah. Like he does these type of things don't happen to him. He doesn't get blindsided like this. He is going to be he is a really, really good athletic director, and he's somebody that usually likes to go after proven commodities unless it's someone within the program like he did with Lincoln Riley to Bob Stoops, because Bob Stoops kind of gave his recommendation to Lincoln Riley and moved him up. So the Oklahoma factor is going to be interesting, but unfortunately for Oklahoma, I think that they're now going to have to take a back seat to Notre Dame unless they just go a different route. Like what I mean by that is I think Notre Dame's going to have to be the first school to figure out their hiring now. I mean, would you say right now, what's the bigger opportunity out there, Notre Dame or Oklahoma?
God, that's so close to me, but just because I guess Notre Dame has that tradition on it, I guess you could kind of put Notre Dame. The only issue is they have the school, which we're going to get into this when we talk about Brian Kelly. People act like he can't recruit. I mean, he's recruiting a bunch of kids that can get into Notre Dame. I mean, what do you think he's going to do? No offense to LSU, a lot of these kids, I mean, they fudge these. Let's be real. They fudge these grades to get it. Yes. Let's be real. Like they're not out here getting some scientists out there that also play football. Notre Dame's a lot harder to recruit at than Oklahoma and LSU. So on that point, I mean, obviously Brian Kelly's going to know what he's doing. So that's my one issue with Notre Dame is: do you want to deal with the religious overtone of it and the academic part of it? Whereas Oklahoma, you're going to have about the same resources. It's just you're going to be able to recruit those. But at the same time, Notre Dame just has this weird, like I know for a while until Urban denied it today, I figured I felt like through all these rumors with SC and Texas and all this and that the only way the Jags would lose Urban is if it was to Notre Dame. And I thought that the whole time. I never considered them a possibility because I figured Brian Kelly was just going to stay there. But until Urban came out today, when I was texting you last night, I was like, look, I wouldn't be shocked if Urban didn't leave for them, to be honest. But it looks like he's going to stay. Notre Dame, just with the name recognition, has a chance to get anyone they want again. So it's like,
No
It's kind
doubt.
of a similar situation, but Notre Dame might just have it just based off the tradition and the power of them.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's neck and neck. I think it's really hard to compare. The TV contract, the money deals, all that stuff. Notre Dame is just so elite in that aspect, but it's really hard to compare when it comes to which one's better. But I think we should just jump right into Brian Kelly here, and that was my main thing here, man. What you kind of said, Brian Kelly is such a damn good coach. Like he gets a lot of flack because he's gotten destroyed in the big moments, but I don't think that people understand unless they're really close with college football and knowledgeable with college football how hard it is to be successful at a school like Notre Dame, like Stanford. And again, I understand their power is so big that you could just, a lot of people think you just show up there and you snap your fingers and all these players come. That's not true because a lot of these players can't handle the curriculum. And that's no disrespect to the players, but there are a lot of players out there that Notre Dame has to turn their head and say no to because they don't have the grades or because they get into the school and then they're not actually able to handle the curriculum with football. This is not a school where once it's football season, school's done. You're still going to class. You're still doing your schoolwork at Notre Dame and you have to keep a certain GPA or you're off. And Kelly was always able to put together elite teams. And is the main thing about Brian Kelly is his teams always got better towards the end of the year, just like this year. They did not look like a good team at all in the beginning of the year. If they played Cincinnati right now, I don't know if we still get that same result. And that's no disrespect to Cincinnati. That's just how much better this team is now. He's going to do that with absolutely zero restrictions at LSU. No offense, again, to LSU and some of those boys down there in Louisiana, but he can get his hands on any kid he wants with no restriction at all. This is a home run hire for LSU, bro. This is one of the biggest hires LSU could have gotten. Their AD wanted to go big game hunting. He's always done it. He's done it in not just football, in all these schools. He went after, now I'm blanking her name, the Baylor head coach for women's basketball, who's like, she's awesome. He went and stole her from Baylor. He goes after big name guys, and he got this one. I think this is the best hire they could have got, not named Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, I mean, when we were doing our top 3 coaches, we never even included Brian Kelly because, like I said, we didn't think he was going to leave. I mean, and the thing that we were talking about too, yeah, he loses in big games, but what you're saying is completely the point. And I think it's the people that only really watch college football or only watch the NFL and then watch playoff time that realize that. The people that are draft nerds like me, I mean, look at who they put in the NFL. I mean, they put in a few O linemen here and there, and that's mostly developed. Like, it's not like they were like huge 5 stars coming out. Like Quentin Nelson and all them, they developed into what they became, and then they'd kill it in the NFL. But skill position wise, I mean, when's the last Notre Dame quarterback that's like just dominant in the NFL? Like, it's been a while. Yeah. I mean, he's got Jack Cohn throwing the ball. I mean, I didn't think Cohn knew how to throw a forward pass at Wisconsin. So, I mean, there's
didn't look that way, that's for sure.
So there's that. I mean, it's not like he's throwing a bunch of corners and everybody in there. He has Kyle Hamilton this year, who's a stud at safety, right? I mean, name your next best NFL prospect on Notre Dame. Kyron Williams, maybe, and he'll go like 3rd round with running backs. I mean, he's doing this with recruits and players that aren't big time like that. Just wait till he gets LSU's players. Wait till you see what he does with like Kayvon Butte on the outside. Wait till you see what he does with whatever quarterback he brings in because they're going to need a quarterback. Wait till you see what he does with all the LSU resources. He's a much better coach than people give him credit for, and it's because they don't realize that he's doing a lot with kind of a little bit of talent around him. He's really coaching these players up to be that level that they are at. So I love the hire for LSU, to be honest. I know my wife's excited about it. She's an LSU fan. So, I mean, it's a good thing to have for LSU. They got a big name. They got a really good name that I didn't think was available. So what they did was actually just spot on. I feel like he's going to go in the transfer portal, get him a quarterback, and they're going to be good next year and the year after. It's LSU. They're going to turn the talent around, and he's going to have them coached right.
I agree. I would not be shocked one bit if he has them I don't know if he could get them into the playoff next year, but I could see him having a 1, 2, 3 loss team by next year easily. And that's a huge turnaround really quickly. He's going to dominate at LSU, man. And the whole thing is, can he go up against Bama, all that stuff? He is such a good coach, and you hit it on the nail with the developing part. He develops players, and that's the most important thing that you can do in the SEC. Also, he gets some big dudes up there in Notre Dame on the offensive and defensive line. He's going to be able to do that at LSU as well. I think this is a huge, huge, huge hire for LSU. It's the best they could have gotten under Lincoln Riley. And like you said, I didn't see this coming at all because I thought the only job that Brian Kelly would leave for is a pro job. I really didn't think he was going to leave Notre Dame unless it was to retire or unless it was for a pro job. I just didn't see him because he's a Catholic guy. He loved Notre Dame. He's been there for 12 years, whatever. And I just thought that it was, why would he leave? So the fact that they did get him to leave, maybe he's looking at this situation, which I really respect, and he's saying, I've hit my limit at Notre Dame. I've hit it. Maybe I can maybe get us back to the national championship one day, but I think this is my limit. Why not? I'm older. I'm in my 60s. Why not go give it one full swing of the bat with no limitations, no restrictions at a top tier school? And he saw this opening and he ran for it. And I really respect him for doing it. I like it, and I can't wait to see how he does.
Yeah, for sure. So on the playoff thing, that makes sense. I also did want to bring this up because I had it written down. I forgot about it. On the people saying he can't coach, I mean, everyone thinks about Cincinnati now with Fickell. Cincinnati could play when he was coaching them. That's what put Cincinnati on the map. It was Brian Kelly's Cincinnati teams with Travis Kelce and all them. Right. Like that's his coaching ability. Like he had them playing they have way more talent now with Fickell than they did back then. And they're up there playing way above their competition level when he was there. So the other thing about the playoff that you mentioned is smart because I think he probably realizes when we make it as a 4 team, we usually get blown out in the first round when we go against them. They're going to 12 teams. You might start losing in the first round to some of these teams as a 12-team playoff. I mean, you could draw Georgia, Bama, Clemson's going to be coming back. Now USC's hot. I mean, Oregon can probably play with those Notre Dame boys too. You got Oklahoma will still be a powerhouse. You got all these teams that now you're looking at a 12-team playoff. You're losing first, second round at Notre Dame just because of the talent difference. And I mean, I can see where he would say, all right, let me go where I know I can get my players in and I'll do the same development I'm doing. And I think that's just where it is. That's where it's going to be. The most important thing is I don't know if Notre Dame is going to hire the OC that is there, but if they don't and he goes to LSU, you got a problem because when if that OC and Brian Kelly's together, they're going to be a problem down there. So I'm interested to see if Notre Dame tries to promote him up or if he ends up going somewhere, because if he ends up going with Brian Kelly to LSU's offense is going to be stacked really quickly down there.
Yeah, agreed. And from what Notre Dame's athletic director, Jack Swarbrick, said, I don't think they are. He said in his press conference today that they're not hiring an interim coach. They said that if they make the playoffs, they're not promoting anyone. They're just going to have it kind of coached out, offensive coaches, the offensive defenses, which tells me that they are going after a head coach, which brings me into this part of the conversation. To me, it's Luke Fickell or it's nothing. I mean, to me, I think Luke Fickell, obviously Urban Meyer, but like you just said, he said he's not going after it. We've heard coaches say that before, and it's happened. I just don't see it happening because Urban would have to leave now. Urban would have to leave in the next couple of weeks. I don't see Urban running from the NFL before the season's over. If somehow it lined up, which it doesn't, where it opened up right when the season ended, then I could maybe see that happen. With Urban's attitude, with his ego, all that stuff, I don't see him leaving in the middle of his first ever season. Because let's understand this. This is why it's an issue with Fickell. If they wait on Luke Fickell, they become extremely far behind in the recruiting cycle. That's the issue with Luke Fickell. That's the problem. So either they're going to put Luke Fickell on the clock and they're going to say, you can't coach your Cincinnati team in the playoff, which would be devastating because he finally gets this team in the playoff and they're not going to let him coach, or he says, I'm not taking the job if you do that, or they have to move on with someone else. It totally depends on how they feel about how okay they are with getting behind in the recruiting process. That's why Brian Kelly dipped so quick. I don't know if you heard, man, but he barely talked to his players. He headed out because he knew, I got to go. I got to start this process now. I don't want to lose any time. To me, Luke Fickell is the guy, but the issue standing in the way is Cincinnati's playoff hopes. I don't see Luke Fickell leaving that chance. If they make that, now if they lose this weekend, then all things done. And I could see Luke Fickell being the head coach of Notre Dame by Monday morning. But if they beat Houston, Notre Dame then comes to a crossroads where they have to decide, do we want to wait on Luke Fickell and get behind, or do we want to go with our second best candidate?
Yeah, I think they're probably going to wait on Fickell, in my opinion.
Which I think is a smart move.
Yeah, if you can't get Urban, you go after Fickell. That's kind of where I was at on that. And me and you've discussed Luke Fickell. He's a Midwest guy. Like it would if he was going to leave Cincinnati, it was going to be for an Ohio State, a Michigan State, Penn State, or Notre Dame. It was going to be one of those five.
Yeah,
and Notre Dame's probably the biggest one that he would be able to get out of that because I don't see Ryan Day going anywhere for a while.
And to be honest with you, man, I honestly think he loves Cincinnati so much that I really think it would come down to really Ohio State and Notre Dame. I think maybe Michigan or Penn State, maybe, but I really think Ohio State and Notre Dame are the two schools that he would leave Cincy for. That's my belief.
Yeah, and I think they probably are having these discussions with his agent, and I think they probably are like, look, whenever your team loses, whether it's next week, the week after, or you win the championship, that's when we'll announce it. I think if they lost on Saturday, it'd be announced the next hour and a half he's their coach. If they lost in the semifinal, it'll be announced the next hour and a half he's their coach. That's kind of how I feel it's going to be. It's going to be a backdoor kind of dealing thing, which makes sense because then you can kind of sneak out to those recruits. Hey, I'm going to be there. I just can't announce it. Don't say anything. It's going to be kind of like one of those little shady situations, which you have to operate in with how recruiting is and everything is now. They're definitely going after the right guy. Fickell needs to go there, which actually it kind of the domino effect of all this is these big name jobs are pulling people from other jobs, which is pulling people from other jobs, which then Cincinnati is going to be open. That's going to be a good spot for those smaller school people. We talked about like Coastal's coach and all that. Like Cincinnati is going to be targeting like some of those people. It's a madhouse right now. But you're right. Fickell's the guy. He brought Cincinnati up. He's got them in the playoff right now. He can coach. He can recruit. He's going to be the perfect guy to take over Notre Dame and maybe extend what Brian Kelly had started. Maybe get a few more of the recruits Brian Kelly couldn't get there and just kind of lay it back. Maybe get a better quarterback in there, and he can take Notre Dame to another level possibly than Brian Kelly even did, which I know sounds like counterintuitive to what we were saying about Brian Kelly and LSU. But I almost feel like it's like a school boost. Like they're going to the school, that school's going to boost them. Brian Kelly would be boosted by LSU, Fickell will be boosted by Notre Dame, and they could probably both hit new heights there. It's almost like a win-win move for both sides.
I completely agree. I think that it is literally a zero drop off if they're able to get Luke Fickell. And the reason why where I'm able to say what you're saying and agree with you is that he can take them to a different height has nothing to do with Brian Kelly. It's just it's a new energy. It's a younger guy. It's a newer vibe. And it's a guy that now has credibility. Even though Cincinnati is a smaller school, Luke Fickell has brought and turned up a lot of credibility for what he's doing at Cincinnati because it's not a one-hit wonder. He's been doing this for 2-3 years in a row now. He is on the map. His name is going everywhere. He fits this description for Notre Dame. He fits what Jack Swarbrick wants. He fits as a guy that will go to Notre Dame and coach there for 15 plus years and have a ton of success. He's a loyal guy. He likes to stay in the Midwest. And this goes back. Now this comes to Luke Fickell. I mean, no disrespect to Cincinnati. But what the hell are we talking about here? If Luke Fickell even has to take a moment to think about this, that would be mind-blowing to me, man. And it's no disrespect to Cincinnati. It's Notre Dame. And at some point, man, no matter how good of a coach you are, you will be capped out at the Power 5 level. That's just how the system works. Even if they update the playoff and make it bigger, you will eventually be capped out at the Power 5 level, because no matter how good of a coach you are, these bigger, at the G5 level, not the Power 5 level, you will be capped out at the G5 level, because no matter how good you are, these Power 5 schools are always going to get better and more recruits. And you're always not going to have the best recruiting class that you can get. You're going to lose guys. It happens. He is at the highest of the high that he can be at Cincinnati. You got to take a bow, love what you did, and move on, man. You cannot miss this opportunity, because if Notre Dame does go hire someone else and it's the right guy, it might not come open again in your coaching span.
Yeah, I've got to say, if he was to turn down Notre Dame to stay at Cincinnati, it would have to be two things. One, he would be wanting to shepherd them into the Big 12 for some reason, which would be that would be the most loyal coach of all time in college football.
Ever.
The second thing would be, that would say to me, literally the only way he'd ever leave Cincinnati is to go to Ohio State. And it's just he wants to be in Ohio. But I just don't see that. I think he's going to go to Notre Dame. There's no way he turns them down. I think he's their number one. That's one of the two places he'd go to, like you said. I think it just makes too much sense. I think he'll end up going there. You're right, he's capped out at Group of 5. I mean, maybe they could beat Michigan in the playoff, but they would lose so bad to Georgia if they played. Like, Georgia would just dominate the trenches too hard on them. So I think Michigan would beat them still too. So that's my opinion on it. So maybe he would consider staying for the Big 12 move, but like I said, he'd be the most loyal college football coach to ever coach, and I just don't see it happening. That would be absolutely insane to turn down Notre Dame to stay at Cincinnati, even if they are going to the Big 12. That's just insane to me. So I definitely see him being at Notre Dame, which, like I said, will open up Cincinnati to another coach that's somewhere killing it. Like I said, Coastal, you have that type of job. You have a bunch of these people. That opens up the top Group of 5 job right there too, that you can go there, and they obviously have success recruiting and everything. They'll be going to the Big 12. You have a shot there. They're gonna be an attractive job for some of these smaller school guys that didn't get a big job to go there for a next stepping stone as well. So if you're Cincinnati, I wouldn't be upset about that. You're just a very good stepping stone program. You were never built in football to be a power team. That's just no offense to you. You never were. You're a great stepping stone program, so you'll get somebody good to step their way up. That's what it is.
Yeah. No doubt about it. I think you nailed it on the head. This is the chaos of what's happening. We thought, okay, USC got Lincoln. Now it's just Oklahoma and LSU. Well, now that LSU gets Brian Kelly, it opens up Notre Dame, which then could open up Cincinnati, which who knows what that could open up there. I mean, look, you got Virginia Tech hiring Penn State's defensive coordinator. I think his name is Brent Pry, as their next head coach. And that's no disrespect to Virginia Tech. That could be a great – I mean, he's been with James Franklin since the Vanderbilt days. So he knows a lot about James Franklin. He knows a lot how it works. But it was about a week ago or less. It was like Saturday when I saw all these Virginia Tech people saying that Matt Campbell wants to go to VT. And then they ended up with Brent Pry. And then we hear Matt Campbell wanted the USC job. USC ends up getting Lincoln Riley. Now we hear Matt Campbell wants the Notre Dame job. And like Matt Campbell,
and Oklahoma, he wants every job.
He wants every job. And I don't know if you saw his press conference after the TCU win. He was emotional. Like, that was a guy that looked like he just coached his last game at Iowa State, but now it looks like he might not be. I mean, it's crazy how the domino works, bro, where a really good coach in Matt Campbell is probably going to get left out of this whole cycle, even though some of it's on him, because I heard he was asking for like $8 million from Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech doesn't have the money to pay $8 million. And that could have just been him setting off a smokescreen to say, I don't really want to go to you guys, so I'm going to say some outrageous number that I know you guys can't match. But they don't have the money to offer $8 million a year. So it'll be interesting. Maybe Oklahoma does go hire him instead of Brent Venables. I don't know. But that's kind of the ramifications that we have from these big names leaving. It's kind of like you get left out of the dust a little bit.
Yeah. So two things. I'm going to talk about Matt Campbell, and then I'm going to ask you a question, and it's more of a rumor question, so I'm going to throw it at you. But Matt Campbell, first off, his agent is throwing his name everywhere. I heard Oklahoma. I heard Virginia Tech. I heard Notre Dame. I've heard USC. I heard people after Thanksgiving saying that the Lions will fire Dan Campbell and they need to go get the right Campbell. I've heard him getting thrown out there. I mean, Matt Campbell's rumored to go everywhere. If he ends up stuck at Iowa State, that's going to be the funniest thing to happen this whole time. So that's just hilarious because he's the rumor guy. Like, he's the guy that everyone just throws at and then they get a bigger name afterwards. The thing that I want to talk about Oklahoma real quick, because I think this is funny. It's one of two things. Everyone said their first target was Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, you laughed at it. Yeah. Did you hear Cliff hasn't denied any of that yet?
Fascinating.
It's so weird. Now, Cliff has 1 year left on his contract, so that's easily a contract negotiation thing from Cliff to be like, hey, I mean, I'm wanted. If you want me to stay here with Kyler and keep this rolling, I mean, you might want to pay me and get my contract extended. That's what I feel like it is. But if you're Oklahoma, do you really want to go hire Cliff? I know he's doing well, right? He's doing great in the NFL. He's got Kyler and like a bunch. Their team's crazy talented at Arizona. We talk about it all the time on the NFL shows. Arizona is like a talented team that's on the upswing. Cliff never won in college. That was his big knock beforehand. Let him be an NFL guy and win. I don't know why Oklahoma would even go after Cliff like that, in my opinion. He didn't win at Texas Tech. Like, why would you want him there at Oklahoma now? He's winning in the NFL with Kyler and a bunch of talent. I wouldn't want to have to deal with that recruiting-wise, to be honest. I was Oklahoma. I think that's weird that he was their number one choice.
Yeah, so this is – I think you nailed it on the head with the first thing you said. I don't even know, man, if Oklahoma leaked that out. I almost feel like Cliff's agent was the one that created that rumor, bro, just to get himself a new contract deal. Because you're right, man, and he was on the hot seat going into the season. So that's why he hasn't been re-upped yet, because he was on the hot seat. And for all we know, say he doesn't win up. Say they go 14-3 this year, and he doesn't win the first playoff game. He could get fired. I mean, like, he really could. So I think this is his way of trying to get a contract now, so that doesn't end up happening, because that is a talented roster. So for both things, you're right. One, if I'm Cliff, there's no way in hell I'm leaving Kyler Murray. Unless Kyler Murray pulled like a Deshaun Watson tomorrow and decided he doesn't want to play for Arizona anymore, there's no way in hell. Shoot, he's still winning without Kyler at times. So there's no way in hell I would do that. Second, there's no way in hell if I'm Oklahoma. And it's no disrespect to Cliff, but Cliff had Patrick Mahomes. And I know Patrick Mahomes wasn't developed then like he is now, but he had Patrick Mahomes and he wasn't winning more than 7 games a year. Like, I know he'll have a body of talent more than that, than just Patrick Mahomes at Oklahoma. That's not a top choice for me. That's not. If I'm Oklahoma, my first choice, just like Notre Dame, would be Luke Fickell. Now, I don't think Luke Fickell goes there, but you have to try, obviously. That would be my first one. Other than that, man, I really sat here and I was going to pose this question to you. I don't know who Oklahoma goes after other than that, man. I like the idea of Brett Venables, but I'm worried about that. I think that's risky. I think there's a lot of risk that comes into that. I've just been trying to wrap my head around guys that make total sense at Oklahoma. I've heard Mark Stoops. I don't really like that. First of all, if I'm Mark Stoops, I'm never leaving Kentucky. You have the best situation in the world at Kentucky. You have a SEC job that doesn't have a lot of pressure. Like, Kentucky is the best position for him because he can win 9-10 games a year like he's been doing, and that's totally fine. Like, they're good with that. They're not going to fire him because they've been terrible before him. So if I'm Mark Stoops, I'm not doing that. I don't know where they would go from here in terms of some top candidates. Do you have some that you want to throw out?
Yeah, it's spicy though.
Go.
I think they should throw whatever amount of money they can at Matt Rule.
Ooh,
they had all the rumors about SC and all that, and Matt Rule not wanting to leave or whatever, but he dominated that Baylor area down there.
Yo, that is spicy. And hey, the thing about that is this Panthers season, it looks like it's about to go down the shit.
And he's not guaranteed to get Deshaun because Deshaun's no trade. He would still have to waive that, which, as far as I know, Deshaun has not came out and said he's waiving a no trade to go to the Panthers.
No, and I'm telling you, there's going to be other teams involved with Deshaun. If you look at right now, the Giants, they're going to have 2 top 10 picks, bro.
Yeah.
They could get a new GM there and go after, like, dude, this Panthers season could end up going disastrous. Cam Newton looks terrible. Christian McCaffrey's done for the year. Like, and David Tepper's not a very excited, he's a nerve-wracking owner to work for because there's so much pressure he's bringing to you. That's fascinating.
Yeah, so that's where I was going with that. So, number one, they traded away. Their front office made a big mistake the way they traded picks for not only Darnold, but also for CJ Henderson. And then they also tripled down and traded their extra pick to New England for Gilmore. So they're like strapped for picks wise to trade. Number two, the draft is weak. We've already talked about that. It's a weak draft for quarterbacks. So I don't know if Matt Rule's really going to want to ride with one of these weak quarterbacks. So then you look at the free agency market. Russell Wilson ain't going to no Charlotte. I'm sorry. I'm from North Carolina. I love it, and I love to live there and everything. But Russell Wilson and Sierra and all them, they're not going to Charlotte. They're going to a big market if he leaves. Deshaun is yet to waive his no trade clause, and Deshaun's going to have all the power in that because he's already set a year. He'll just keep sitting. That's just how it is at this point. And I don't think they're going to have the ammo to trade for Deshaun at this point the way they gave up the picks this year. They only have that 1-1 this year. So they'd have to trade way far down the line and blow up everything. You'd have to be all behind Deshaun and whatever team you have right now, which I don't know if that's good enough for the Panthers to win, and Deshaun might be too smart to agree to that. Number three, they don't have anyone. It's not going to be Garoppolo. I mean, you're going to bring him in. Who are you going to bring in?
Yeah.
Like you said on Tepper, Tepper's probably hard to work for. Tepper's not used to losing at anything in his life. He's a hedge fund guy. He's aggressive. And then he's with the Steelers all those years. Matt Rule is getting paid a lot of money there, but Oklahoma can pay him the same amount of money, and he'd be a primetime job that he'd have for 20-plus years because they don't fire coaches there. I think that's a solid place. It would just be about if Oklahoma's willing to wait for him to decide with the NFL season, but the way they're losing recruits right now, you could almost just say, all right, we're going to have a down year next year. Let him get in and do your thing. That would be my choice. That's what I was thinking this whole time, because those rumors about him maybe not being happy in the NFL, I thought were true. But I didn't think it would be for SC where all the boosters could bother him so much if you're already dealing with Tepper as an owner. I didn't think it would be for LSU where I just don't trust him being like a Southern SEC South guy like that way. But Oklahoma, even though they're going to the SEC, Oklahoma just feels like where Matt Rule could go. I like him there, to be honest. I feel like that's who they should go after.
I like it a lot. I'm not going to lie. I think that is a really good idea by you. I think that would be as close to a home run hire as you can get, because right now, like I said, man, I mean, if you go and look on some of these recruiting sites and some of these articles and stuff, the guys that they're naming are, again, Brett Venables, which I don't think is a bad hire. Like, I want to suggest that. Like, Brett Venables is, like you said, a great recruiter and a really good defensive coach. He could do some work. There's just risk to that. I've seen Shane Beamer, which, like, yes, Shane Beamer has overachieved this year at South Carolina with some really bad players. That's a big risk. I mean, we've only seen him 1 year as a head coach, and now you want him to jump to Oklahoma. Like, I just, Dave Aranda's a name that I would love. Like, I think that's a huge, but from what I'm hearing is Dave Aranda's staying at Baylor. I think
he got extended. Yeah, he got a ton of money. So.
Yeah, he got a ton of money. So, I mean, that, again, we've seen that happen and coaches leave, but I think he's there. I think he's at Baylor. And then it would be Matt Campbell, which I actually don't think is a bad hire either. But again, I just, how is he going to play into Oklahoma? Like, Iowa State, I get it. You bring in some good recruits there. That's hard. You build a good program there. That's hard. You think, okay, it's easier to do it at Oklahoma, but it's also such a big jump against competition. How is that going to fit in for him? That's even though I know, like, it's the same conference, it's just different because eventually they're going to the SEC and what they are. Like, I wouldn't turn my head to Matt Campbell. I think it would be a good hire, but out of all those names I just named, Matt Rule jumps off the page. Like, that's a name that, like, Brian Kelly, LSU had a hire that jumped off the page and made Bama have to say, damn. USC had a hire that jumped off the page and made Oregon and Utah have to say, damn. Oklahoma, I think the only coach that can really jump off the page and make these other schools like Oklahoma State say, damn, is a Matt Rule. That's a good one, Shawn.
Yeah, like I said, I was thinking about that today, and I was like, really, because they're going to get stuck. Like it's going to be an unproven, a more so unproven guy or a smaller school guy like a Campbell. That it's like, oh, that's kind of underwhelming.
Yeah.
But then I was thinking about it. I'm like, Carolina is in such a bad situation, and those rumors earlier in the year were true. He could say what he wants to. He was definitely poking around about some of these jobs. Like I said, I don't think USC and LSU was a great fit for him. I feel like Oklahoma's a great fit for Matt Rule. I feel like that's a perfect fit for him. So that's something I'd watch out for, if I'm being honest with you, because that Panther season's falling apart at this point.
It is.
The other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit too is LSU definitely had big game hunting in mind, because as far as I know, Napier was probably their second choice, and Florida went and snatched him as fast as they could.
They did.
They were in a hurry to get him. And I think that's an interesting hire right there, because we've talked about Napier getting offered these jobs and him turning them down and being very selective. So it's curious that he selected Florida for that. Maybe he really likes the area and feels like he can do it, because the whole state is open, because none of these three big teams in Florida are really snatching the state like they should. Really, it's Georgia and Bama that dominates recruiting there, and Clemson as well. So it's kind of an LSU, obviously, those four. They all just go steal everyone from Florida. So Billy Napier, he's going to have to come in and really out-recruit some of these people and really start to get this culture turned around, because they've been underperforming these last few years. And even though Mullen had the good season with Trask and Pitts, it was more so a Trask and Pitts type thing where he was able to XO match up them. And it's just they've got to get turned around, because without the star 2 or 3 players, they've been really struggling. So it's an interesting hire with Napier going there as well.
Yeah, I like the hire of Napier. When we did our whole couple weeks ago, our whole top 5, top 3 coaches, Napier was one of my top coaches for LSU because of what he's done with Louisiana, knowing the area, knowing the high school coaches. And I knew that was one job he would take. Clearly, Florida was another one. We know he's turned down Auburn, which is interesting, but he wanted Florida. And maybe that's because, like you said, he feels like he can tap into that area more. To me, it just shows that Scott Woodward, the LSU athletic director, he was going to find a big name. And I don't think he thought Billy Napier was big enough for him, because it just didn't feel like they were. I mean, it didn't even feel like they were really interested in Dave Aranda. To me, it felt like Scott Woodward was going after Lincoln Riley. And once he realized he wasn't getting Lincoln Riley, he immediately turned his head to Brian Kelly. And somehow that ended up working out. Maybe Brian Kelly reached out to him. I don't know. But it just felt like LSU was going to hit a home run with a big name, and Billy Napier didn't come that. But that doesn't mean that Billy Napier's not a good hire. I think it's a great hire. What he's done at a Louisiana school that didn't really even have a big time. Like, I don't even think they had really any winning record. I saw some stat that I think they didn't have a winning record in football until he came. They've had a winning record ever since. He has them in the top 25. He's had him in the Sun Belt Championship every single year. It's a good hire. How's he going to perform in the pack in a big conference like that? That's what we have to wait and see. But all I know is he's a really good recruiter. He knows how to recruit. His players love him. Florida, I think, did a good job with this one, and they clearly pounced on him because, like you just said, there was other. Like, I know Kiffin was interested, just like you said with Miami. Kiffin is fascinating to me because it feels like Kiffin. It feels like he's not happy at Ole Miss, even though he looks like he's happy. Because all I hear is his name and all of this stuff, and maybe that's not him. But it just feels like, okay, he said it felt like he wanted the Florida job. Now it feels like maybe he wants the Miami job. You heard maybe he wanted, well, he's not going to get the Notre Dame job. Could you imagine giving it Notre Dame? The Notre Dame boosters would hate that. but it just always feels like something is coming up with his name. And I think Florida decided, no, we want Billy Napier. We kind of want to go with something that we want to mold here. And it was interesting. I think Billy Napier will do a good job. It might take time because their recruiting class is bad. He's got to turn some things around. Dan Mullen did not have a good recruiting class coming in at all. So he's got to turn that around. But I think he will, dude. He's a good coach.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good hire. I think SEC coaching is at an all-time high. compared to recently. Usually you could see like 4 or 5 of them just churn jobs because they're not hiring the right guy. But I mean, the way Arkansas has kind of turned around into their guy, the way LSU now has Brian Kelly, obviously Saban and Kirby with Bama and Georgia. You have Jimbo rolling at Texas A&M.
Yeah.
I mean, all Oklahoma and Texas is stepping into a madhouse, man, because all these coaches can recruit in the SEC. I just can't get up. I mean, both Mississippi schools, you got Lane Kiffin and Leach there, but I can't get over you with that Lane to Notre Dame thing. That's so funny. Lane would be the first coach in Notre Dame history to, like, going into halftime, they'd be up by 20 on somebody, and he'd be like, "GD, that feels good." It's like, dude, Lane, you can't say that here. Like, that would be like such a Lane Kiffin thing to do. That would so happen.
Yeah.
He'd have to answer all these questions like, "Did you go repent afterwards?" Like that, it'd be so bad.
He's so funny, dude.
I do think Lane just wants to. I think he wants to live in Florida. Like, I think he just enjoyed his coaching down there.
I think so.
I think he wants to live in Florida. So if Miami opens up, it wouldn't shock me if Miami didn't steal him. Because honestly, if you're Lane, though, I mean, I know we talked about Lincoln working smarter, not harder. This is a whole different animal, smarter, not harder. You really want to go against Leach, against Jimbo, against now Brian Kelly, LSU, against Texas and Oklahoma coming in? Or do you want to go against Dabo every year? Like, that's kind of where it is. I mean, I know Clemson and Dabo is something to be reckoned with, but I mean, we haven't seen them with the years to come now that Trevor's gone, and I think he'll turn it around. But you can go against one great coach, or you can go against a conference and a division of them. I feel like Lane would be smart to leave on that, just because I understand where it's coming from, and that is scared play, but I mean, that's the right play too. So
I agree. I think it's interesting because the reason I say that is because he's done a damn good job at Ole Miss, though. Like, that's what's crazy. I mean, he has this team ranked number 8 overall, and it just makes you wonder, is he really going to run away from that? And it's not running away from that. Like you said, it could just be a smarter move, but it seems like he's got this figured out where he can do well and compete in the SEC. Now, it's going to get harder, like you said, but I just feel like Ole Miss is such a good spot for him, dude, because he just embodies that fan base. Like, that Ole Miss just feels to me like Lane Kiffin. They love the hell out of him. But like you said, that man loves Florida. Like there's no secret about that. Like I said, I think he would have accepted that Florida job in a second. That's just my gut reaction. Could be wrong about that. So maybe it's the same with Miami. Maybe if that opens up, he accepts that in a second as well. It'll be fascinating to see. But that's another name to keep our eye on for sure. There's one other thing that I wanted to bring up here. What did you have something written down? Why?
No, all I have left is just the playoff real quick. But is that what you had left?
Yeah, no, I had something else, but I can't remember it now. I thought there was one more coaching. Oh, I guess this means that Mario Cristobal is probably staying at Oregon unless Miami opens up, because that's another name that we haven't talked about a lot. Like, could Oklahoma go after Mario Cristobal? Like, that's a name. I don't think they would. Also, one thing that just came to my mind as well that I wanted to bring up, and I just saw on my paper here. I've heard a lot of rumors that Notre Dame might go after Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern because of the identity of school and academics, and he's been able to do really well at Northwestern. I don't think people understand how terrible his offense is. And I know he's a defensive-minded coach, but like Northwestern's offense is atrocious. Like, it's so freaking bad. I don't know if Notre Dame could pull that off with him unless they were able to bring in a hot, top-notch OC with him. He's a great recruiter. He's a great coach for a very tough school to win at, and he has won. And he's an impressive coach. He's a very impressive coach. I just don't know how I feel about that because, again, man, his offenses, that Northwestern's offense is so freaking bad. I don't know if I see that, but that's a name that you're going to hear because of the identities in school. What are your thoughts on him?
So if you're going to go identities, I wouldn't go with Pat Fitzgerald. Just go hire David Shaw at that point.
I can't. David Shaw has been – I get that, and you're right. He's done some great things. his program has been such a
Oh yeah.
disappointment the last like 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm usually everyone says no offense and then gives offense. So full offense. David Shaw's been bad these last few years.
Bad.
That's just the truth.
He
I
should have
mean,
went to the
he's
NFL
been
years
very
ago.
overrated.
Yeah.
What he should have done was taken a job when he had the chance. That's what he should have
Yes.
done, but he never
Yes.
did. But like I said on what you're talking about with Northwestern, their offense is horrible too. At least I know David Shaw can recruit
That's
at
true.
that level. And like college football is such about recruiting now. That's why, like I said, we've been talking about. That's why Brian Kelly, Lincoln Riley, all these people were leaving. They went to better recruiting spots. I mean, if you're going to do that for likeness, just go after David Shaw, even though I feel he's overrated, and do that. Because Northwestern, you're right. Northwestern's offense, even when they were winning games, is horrible. I mean, they were so bad. I used to hate watching them play,
Yes.
to be honest. No offense. I mean, that's no offense to Northwestern, but y'all's offense is horrible. Like, I don't want to see y'all play offense like that. Y'all are essentially lesser Michigan right now. Michigan at least has good run plays that are fun to watch. For Cristobal, like you said, I think Cristobal only leaves Oregon if it's for Miami. I think him and Lane would probably go head to head for the Miami job. Yeah. That would be where that is. If he was to leave Oregon, I don't know what Oregon's going to do because they'd be in trouble. It would literally be USC at that point because the only reason Oregon's is viable is because Cristobal's able to go down and take those LA recruits like Saban and all them do across the country. But Oregon's the one that's like, okay, but we'll play in LA and we'll be close. It won't be too far. You'll be good. Yeah. And if he was to leave, they'd be in trouble, in my opinion, even though Phil Knight can kind of throw whatever amount of money you want to throw at somebody up there with Nike. Yeah. So that's kind of where that is. I think Cristobal stays or goes to Miami. I think he's not going to go to Oklahoma, none of that. I would be absolutely shocked if he did. So that's where I'm at on that. I said, it's just going to be Lane or him to Miami, no matter what.
It is. I agree that's a smart move. It's just a name that is out there that needed to be mentioned because he is a good coach, but I don't think he is SEC type coach. I don't think he wants to be, frankly, and that's totally fine. Like he was going to interview for the Auburn job. There was rumors that he just thought the Saban playbook was a little too complex, and he kind of passed that up, which is totally fine. He's done a great job in Oregon. If I was him, I'd stay in Oregon. He seems like a guy that would relish the challenge, but I also wouldn't. I also would look into Miami as well if that.
Yeah, especially if he can keep Moorhead offensive coordinator too. Yeah. If he keeps him, like he'll be solid. They'll be fine. He'll have the talent and he'll have Moorhead there to do the X's and O parts. He'll be okay.
No doubt about that. And by the way, speaking of Miami, Miami's offensive coordinator Rhett Lashley went to SMU. He took the head coaching job at SMU, so he will probably be able to continue that SMU type of fast-paced, really good offense. So that's a decent hire because, as we all know, SMU coach Sonny Dykes went to TCU. So it's just a crazy carousel going on here of things that are happening. Let's get into the playoffs to wrap it up, Shawn, now that we're sitting here at about a little over an hour. Anything jump out to you? You said something right off the bat before we started the show that I think you're spot on. If you want to go ahead and open with that.
Yeah, so this playoff ranking for everyone that's watching and saw it, this is going to be the playoff if everything stays chalk next week. Like Michigan, as long as they win, they're going to be more than likely 2. I mean, the thing is, you're going to have Alabama probably lose to Georgia. That's going to be my guess. And they'll fall out for Oklahoma State winning their championship game. That's probably what it's going to be. That's what you're looking at. If Bama was to win, they'd be in. And then it would say the same. If Oklahoma State wins, Bama loses, I think that's where you get the replacement. The only real crazy thing you can do is if Bama was to lose and Oklahoma State loses, would the committee flip on Notre Dame now that they've lost their coach and maybe put in a 2-loss Bama team? That would be an interesting one to go with, but I don't see any of those things happening. That would be absolute chaos. Yeah. I think Bama probably loses. I think Oklahoma State probably wins, and we're going to get kind of a really strange playoff here with a Georgia versus Oklahoma State and a Michigan versus Cincinnati, where Georgia would have to be the heavy favorites to win it all at that point.
Yep, I completely agree. I still think, I still think that even if Bama lost, I brought up at the very, very beginning about a 2-loss Bama. Ever since their last couple of games, I'm out on that. And again, I know I brought that up, and that was the first thing I said when the first ever college football playoff thing came out. They're just not a good football team compared to what they used to be. People need to understand that, okay? Because Alabama is still a very good team. We just hold the expectation of Alabama. Like, real quick, if you saw Nick Saban after that win last week, he was ecstatic. And I was watching that with some friends, and I was like, wow. Like I thought Nick Saban was going to be pissed because they played terrible. But I think Nick Saban understands this isn't last year's team. This isn't one of the most stacked teams ever. This is a team that is lacking a run game, that is lacking the big boys on both sides of the ball. And he knows that. And I think he was just happy to see them gut out a win. And I think that's his expectations. Now, that doesn't mean they don't go in and beat Georgia, but I just don't see this team that good anymore. And because of that, unless they lost like really, really close, all that stuff, I still think because it's Notre Dame and because I think people would genuinely be interested in the appeal of them playing without their head coach, which drives more money, I think Notre Dame would be in if Alabama lost and Oklahoma State lost. But it's very simple. Oklahoma State wins, Alabama loses, Oklahoma State is going to the playoff for the first time ever, which is crazy. The question then becomes is, because to me, man, what I think is going to happen is I think Georgia's going to beat Alabama. I think Michigan's going to beat Iowa. I think Cincinnati's going to beat Houston. And I think Oklahoma State is going to have a tough time against Baylor, but I do think they're going to squeak it out. And the question then for us will become, does Oklahoma State jump Cincinnati? Because the seeding is very, very important this year because nobody wants to be that 4 seed. This is an important thing. So would they move Cincinnati up to 3 and Oklahoma State up to 4? Would they jump Cincinnati? That to me is the question. Again, I could be wrong. Alabama could go in and beat Georgia, but I think what we're going to end up seeing is what I just said.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think there's a good shot that Oklahoma State might jump them, just because I don't know. You kind of want to burn Cincinnati on the no. Again, no offense, Cincinnati.
I do think the committee wants to. I think the committee wants to say, "Hey, Cincinnati, we're going to put you in, but go play Georgia."
Yeah, I think you have the worry that Michigan would just roll Cincinnati, and then obviously Georgia would roll Oklahoma State, and it just wouldn't be either competitive games. I think you probably think, okay, maybe Oklahoma State and Michigan would be a more competitive game, and that then you just at least have one good game out of it. Because honestly, we talked about this. Michigan and Georgia are almost the same team. Georgia just has much better players. They play the same way. It's just Georgia has better players all around. And that's the case. I think that's why they're going to beat Bama as well. I know we've talked a lot about Bama, but we haven't really gotten technical on it. Bama's defense isn't what Bama's defense usually is. Bama's defense consists of them now putting Kool-Aid McKinstry in at corner and him being their legit corner as a true freshman, and Will Anderson just being an absolute terminator and destroying the ball, which you can double Will Anderson because the rest of them really can't get pressure. I mean, that's what it is. They have 2 like dynamic players on defense right now, which is unusual for a Saban team. And then on offense, it's a lot of Bryce Young, Jamison Williams, and Evan Neal being the only true offensive lineman that's like great right now. So they're just a weaker Bama team, especially compared to that great one they had last year. They just lost too many people, which happens to great teams all the time. You see Clemson this year now too. That's just how it goes. So I do believe Georgia wins because they just have much better players. But like we were talking about, it's down to the end. It's going to be one of 3 scenarios. You're going to get both of them lose and Notre Dame maybe jump them. You're going to get Bama losing and Oklahoma State getting in, or you're going to get Bama winning somehow and it being that top 4. Because I just don't see Michigan losing to Iowa now, even though that is kind of a trap game. I think it'll be closer than people think, but I think they win it. And Cincinnati, I guess they've kind of turned it on at the end, so I think they probably will beat Houston to make it in too.
Yeah, I agree. I do think Baylor will give Oklahoma State troubles, and I would not be shocked if they win. But I think Oklahoma State should squeak out that one. It'll be interesting, man. There's no doubt about it, but it will set up for some fun because either we're going to have chalk or there's a very good chance that we have chaos. Either way, we're going to be here to debate it. We're also going to be back tomorrow to talk about the NFL. We're going to go through an NFL recap real quick, and then we're going to dive into the NFL preview. So we'll go through that tomorrow, and then Shawn will post that out on Thursday.
I'll do
Thursday.
it.
Yep, correct. Awesome. Other than that, Shawn, appreciate this, man. It was fun as always. I mean, really, I was so excited for this pod. One of the most exciting ones because we both love college football, and this is some news that we have not seen in a long, long time. We will keep talking about this. Trust me, these conversations will keep going on through our college football show as more and more jobs get open and more hires happen. For now, I am Kayvon Izami. That is Shawn White. This is the Money Down Pod. Please give us a like and a subscribe to the show. It means a ton to us. It really helps the show out. Give us a comment if you have any questions that you want us to answer or anything that you want us to talk about in terms of your team. Let us know, and we will be back early. We'll be back on Thursday with the NFL preview and to talk about some of the games that happened this past weekend in the NFL. Have a great night.